Computer?
Yes?
Why didn't you save me? Is there any possible reason as to why you didn't take me away from that horrid place?
Frozen?
Why did you not save me from dying? I can answer that. Shadow me? What are you? Oh, I don't want to go by that name, by the way. I prefer Chaos. It's less confusing that way. So, first off, he couldn't save you. What happened in that dimension causes electronics to get messed up, so all he could do was watch. Secondly, I was the one who suggested that you go to that dimension. Assuming that you know why I couldn't be saved, then you must have known what would happen. So why did you send me there? The whole saving the dimensions thing you two are doing. I went in. You know about that? Well, you two aren't exactly quiet about it. Anyways, you'll need to be stronger if you want to face whatever comes our way, whether it be that dimension destroyer or anything within the dimension itself. It would help if you had knowledge on what makes a person. Yeah, I know, a person's heart. That's why we can't put people into data form. That silence makes it seem like I'm missing something. As usual.
There's more than just the heart. 4 pieces of a person to be exact. The heart, mind, body, and soul. Each of which having an extreme importance of what makes up a person.
Wait, what? Why didn't you tell me any of this? I'm surprised too, honestly. It seems like that's a pretty important thing to bring up.
I was going to give you the information piece at a time. There's a lot that goes into this stuff.
You always say that kind of stuff. Kung Fu Panda, the Dreamworks film about a panda obsessed with everything kung fu to the point of dreams and fantasizing, who is also held down by his noodle-loving father, and ends up having to become the destined dragon warrior. He also must defeat the legend Tai Lung, but in order to do that, he has to learn kung fu and learn to believe in himself. He also practically gets tortured during that time, but that's besides the point. This movie was awesome. Seeing amazingly animated kung fu from adorable or horrifyingly fierce characters was a very fun sight to see. With the amount of love that this movie got, you can imagine that people would want to take kung fu into their own hands, and a video game would be a great way to do so. I mean, actually learning kung fu would debatably be a better way, but that's not what this video is for, and I'm not going over that game again. That's in the past. So instead, I'm going to focus on the present with the Kung Fu Panda video game and see if this is a much better representation of kung fu. The story goes through the same events as the movie. Mostly. The game adds in new stuff with the Croc Gang, Wu Sisters, and Tai Lung's training grounds, which is a little weird. But through my thorough research of 2019 internet, the Wu Sisters were early concept characters for Kung Fu Panda and ended up being the main antagonists for the Secrets of the Masters shorts. Tai Lung's training ground was where he trained an army that was mentioned in the movie and wasn't used for film usage, but instead made his way into video game format. The Croc Gang doesn't really have any connection to early concept stuff, unfortunately. It's just unique to this game. Now, even though the stuff with the Croc Gang and the Wu Sisters is partially influenced by Tai Lung being freed from prison, it still feels like a bunch of filler for the game, especially the Croc Gang stuff. It doesn't really help much of the story, even though it's supposed to be tied to it. It feels like a side quest and put into the game to be different from the movie, just for the sake of being different from the movie. But everything up to that point, which was pretty accurate to the movie, was just fine. It kinda just leaves a sour taste in my mouth. I will admit that I like that the game actually explains how Po learned the Wuxi finger hold, since in the movie they literally just say, "I figured it out," which does not explain that at all. However, Po figuring it out at Tai Lung's training grounds is kinda weird because we kinda have to assume that Tai Lung didn't figure it out, even though it was at his training grounds for his army and no one else he trained figured it out. Maybe it's just hidden there and he doesn't know about it. Or maybe I'm thinking about this too much, but details are important, especially when you want to add stuff to try and have other things make sense. The game is pretty well interpreted into a game, aside from most of the filler stuff. With this being a pretty early PS3 title that released in 2008, the models for characters look, and I'm putting this lightly, amazing. Every character looks like they have every detail that makes them stand out. There's even jiggle physics on Po. You know, I never thought I'd say that. I also don't know if that's the weirdest thing I've ever said for these videos. Anyways, I can say this game helped give the PS3 a good rep graphically at the very least. In terms of writing, there are times where lines from the movie are used, which does make sense. A good amount of the plot is the same as the movie, so having lines being the same isn't exactly out of the window. Plus, it's something that's nice to catch for anyone who watched the movie before or after playing the game. For the voice work, there is only one character that has the same voice actor as the original movie, and it starts with a P. Ping. What, did you think someone else had their original voice that starts with P? I don't know why you'd think that, that's kinda stupid of you to assume. But yeah, looking at the original cast of Angelina Jolie, Jackie Chan, Seth Rogen, and more, you can imagine why it was difficult to get one of them back, let alone all of them. Not even Jablinski Games himself reprised the role. However, the transitions between levels, which looks quite nice by the way, is voiced by Mike Wingert, who voices Poe in this game. And not only is the writing for it pretty good, but Mike Wingert does a really good job at voicing Poe.
Even Master Shifu began to take notice. Whew! Finally!
He also voices Poe in commercials for websites and internet, which doesn't make sense given Kung Fu Panda's time era, but whatever. He's also Poe in the TV show for Kung Fu Panda. I honestly thought it was Jack Black doing all of this until I looked it up, so Mike Wingert, if you for some reason see this, you did a really good job. The others are either good interpretations of the characters due to them already having experience with interpreting roles for commercials, or literally have played similar roles, or they're just okay. The music is pretty grand in terms of sound quality, despite a good amount of them being really short. The difference in length for music is pretty weird, as there are tracks that aren't even a minute long when looped, and then there's tracks that are almost 3 minutes or longer. Regardless, the soundtrack is good at being atmospheric for calm areas and action-packed for fights, but honestly, most of it's not that memorable, so it's overall just alright. Poe has to travel throughout the Valley of Peace by crossing plenty of gaps, climbing walls, and swinging through trees. He also has to defeat many enemies. That doesn't really sound like a Valley of Peace saying that out loud. Regardless, there are two types of enemies in this game, light ones and heavy ones. I'm mainly bringing that up early because two of your methods of attacking are light and heavy attacks. These attacks are best used against the corresponding enemy types, as light enemies will often dodge out of the way of heavy attacks, and heavy enemies won't be affected by light attacks. These two attacks can also be comboed together to do special moves like juggling light enemies in the air then knocking them forward, the 3 Palms of Fury, which is 3 light attacks, and the Fast Fast Strong command. That's actually what it's called, just Fast Fast Strong, which is a little bit annoying. There's also a jump attack, dash attack, and charge attack that can be used. In addition to that, Poe can throw the light enemies, sending them barreling into other enemies. Poe's defensive options are blocking, which is better against light enemies, and dodging, which is better against heavy enemies. Poe has Panda Techniques that you unlock throughout the game. These techniques require chi to use, which you get back by beating enemies. The Panda Stumble has Poe roll around and deal damage whenever he bumps into enemies. The Panda Quake is basically a ground pound. Iron Belly is a counter move you use while blocking. The Fun Ball is another counter move, but it also sends you into a Panda Stumble. Around areas you are able to pick up a weapon off the ground and use it for stronger long-reaching attacks, or it can be thrown at something. These will break after a number of swings, and while using these weapons, some abilities can't be used. In various areas there are rolling panda signs. These are indications of a hill that you will be forced to roll down. Now, Poe isn't the only playable character. Most of the others are able to do the same actions that Poe can. There's Tigress, who does normal things, Monkey, who can bash his body into enemy skulls with a monkey tail grab, Crane, who is used as a survive until the end of a segment type of gameplay while flying around, and lastly Master Shifu, who can pound his feet into enemies' faces as well as dash quickly through them. He's also able to bounce on clouds somehow. Kung Fu just gives you powers like that, I guess. In the bottom left, there's a meter that shows up whenever you hit enemies. The more often you hit enemies in succession, this meter fills up. The more filled this meter is, the stronger your attacks become. During bosses, you will have quick time events where you have to do the correct action before time runs out for you to do said input. If you want to recover health, you have to collect food, specifically dumplings, which recover small amounts of health. These can be gotten from beating enemies and broken objects. Gold coins are scattered around, and you can collect those for points which are used to give Poe upgrades, like health and chi extensions, and making all of his attacks and Panda Techniques stronger, longer reaching, or requiring less chi. There's also outfits he can purchase, though I didn't do that because upgrades are much more important to me. Hidden around are rare coins which get you extras, multiplayer modes, and characters to use for said multiplayer modes. There are also figurines of characters which unlock a montage for the respective character. The multiplayer gives 14 minigames with 8 characters to choose. 4 of these minigames are brawling, where the players fight against each other with 4 different stages. 3 of these are team-based minigames where you have to survive a certain amount of rounds while completing an objective. The rest are either 2v2 or free-for-all minigames where you complete various objectives like breaking targets and playing board games that have Chinese themes to them. When it comes to playing as Po and Shifu, they're pretty enjoyable most of the time. The idea of getting stronger by relentlessly beating enemies is an interesting one, and it works pretty well. This does sound a little broken, but if you're bad at defense, this could easily be kept from being a thing for you. Special techniques needing chi keeps you from being able to just spam those moves as often as you want, especially against bosses. Playing as Shifu was especially cool since I got to constantly throw my tiny body into multiple enemies and bounce off their heads over and over. It was kind of funny actually. And upgrading your moves does make you incredibly strong against common enemies, but not against bosses, which is a little strange, but at the same time I feel like that's the kind of aesthetic that Kung Fu Panda has been going for, of being able to completely wipe out common enemies, but still having a decent fight against boss fights. But unfortunately, that's all the good that I have, and I really struggle to find some good to speak of. Tai Lung is really stupid to fight against, as a lot of his attacks have so little time in between them to make them punishable without doing the Iron Belly technique, which is a limited resource. If you're too far away, then you might accidentally use a dash attack, which takes a long time to come out and doesn't link into anything. It's also way easier to activate and miss than you think. Even if you are close enough to him, he's only affected by heavy attacks since he's a heavy enemy, so you're not able to juggle or throw him, but half the time when you are using heavy attacks, he'll get knocked back too far so you can't land more hits on him, causing the fight to drag on. Oh, also, in the final phase, he can regenerate his health, so he's got that on top of everything else. By the way, for the weapons you can pick up, why is there so much missed potential for them? You're telling me in this realm of having martial art mastery, where I'm supposed to be the dragon warrior surrounded by people using swords and axes, and there's plenty of other stuff that could be useful like a shield or a hammer or throwing stars, and the only thing I can do is pick up a staff that I can only do one combo with? Even ignoring the lack of multiple weapons, you have a light attack and a heavy attack normally. Having these with a staff shouldn't be a problem, especially when it's the only weapon type in the game. While I enjoyed getting to play as Shifu, the Furious 5 got screwed over hard. Monkey only gets a small segment within one level and also has the same ability as Shifu, just named differently, and less moves than Shifu as well. And remember earlier when I said some bosses are basically nothing but quick time events? Well, Tigress, who is literally only playable for one boss, gets that treatment with hers, and she's able to move around freely. Viper and Mantis's boss is literally just a quick time event. What's worse is that all of this really shouldn't even be playable. Tigress's boss, which was only shown off for a few seconds in the movie by the way, you didn't even see her fight it, could have been skipped over without any problems. Viper and Mantis's boss could have just been a cutscene, and Monkey's segment is so short that just playing as Po for the entire level would have worked out just fine. The only one that gets a decent amount of playtime is Crane, which would be fine if the other Furious 5 members got that too. I don't even think any of them get benefits from the upgrades either. If Tigress got a boss against Tai Lung, that would have been cool. And since filler is added in the story anyways, why not have more playable areas with Monkey and actual combat for Crane? And literally anything that isn't just quick time events for Viper and Mantis. That would have been fun, creative, and would have given the filler a little bit more of a purpose. With these 5 being such major characters, you would think that they would get a better treatment than they do in this game. So what about playing as them in the multiplayer minigames? Is that any better? I wish I knew. For one, you don't get to play as most of the Furious 5 even for minigames, which screws them over even more. Secondly, I used the minigames for playing as the 4 other characters because they wouldn't have gotten screen time otherwise. And third, most of the minigames suck for single player. 8 of the minigames, those being the brawling and 2v2 ones, can't be played by yourself because you can't create computers. Why can't you create computers for these? I know they are multiplayer games, but having them be locked down to just multiplayer is really dumb, especially since you can start the game up by yourself. you just won't be able to compete against anyone, which kinda, defeats the entire purpose of these game modes. And even though you can start up the team challenges by yourself and actually have them function, they are so difficult by yourself to the point where you can only get through them with at least one other person. That just leaves the free-for-all minigames, which can end up being more frustrating than anything else. The multiplayer is completely pointless unless you have at least someone with you to play it. I wonder how many people remember this.
Congratulations, you won!
That's basically how it was every time I found a rare coin.
Congratulations!
This isn't that bad if you are actively trying to avoid them, but for a person that is a huge collectionist, like I am, it's just an annoyance having to hear this description every time I get it.
Congratulations, you won!
Yes, I am very aware that I have gotten a rare coin. It feels like I got a virus on my PS3. Also, the montages you get from figurines are honestly really bad. They don't feel like much of a reward, and considering that they are much harder to find than the rare coins, I kinda expect more from them. Now again, you don't have to collect these, so if you don't care, they're not a problem. And speaking of collecting things, this game has no trophy support, which is odd, but that's just because PlayStation didn't start the trophy system until 2009. Even some games in early 2009 didn't have trophies. Unfortunately for this game, it was released in June 2008, which is pretty close to this. And I won't hold the game down on that, it's just weird seeing a PS3 game without trophies for it. That's just how I grew up with the PS3. I honestly want to like this game more, mainly because I played this when I was younger and I enjoyed it. But for every good thing I could bring up, it was met with a stronger negative aspect countering it. The story added things, but most of it feels like filler. The game looks good graphically, but most of the music, while grand in scale, also manages to be forgettable. Poe and Shifu play fine mostly, but most of the Furious 5 is treated horribly. The minigames, okay, there's nothing good about those, they suck. A lot of potential went down the drain when it came to this game. I'm supposed to feel like the awesome dragon warrior with amazing legends by my side, but instead, I'm just a fanboy at my dad's noodle shop wanting more than what I've been given, and I really doubt that's what this game should be doing. I decided to help you find out about the soul, which is why I sent you to that dimension to get bitten by a void. You encountering one of the strongest voids there wasn't part of the plan, but it at least made it harder for you to escape without any bites, so it turned out to be better than expected.
What is him getting bitten supposed to do?
It turns you into an in-birth, a being with the powers of Exus injected into your vessel. It's about as limited as your imagination. You already have the imagination thing down, so that's good. Wait, how do you know about that? Computer told me about that. Great, more stuff I'm not told about. Okay, I'm not even from that dimension. I have no connection to that dimension. Isn't there some kind of rule against that? I don't want any of these powers, so why do I have these?
Now that I think about it, if that was a rule, I wouldn't have been affected by those nanites when we got sent over to Providence, since I'm not from either of those dimensions. There might be some special rules in certain situations that we don't know about, but we are still affected in some way or another by other dimensional affairs.
Basically, you're stuck with those powers, whether you like it or not. What's going on, my fellow residents? It's me, TheFrozenCavern, and thank you guys for making it to the end of this video. Now, some of you already know, but I made a poll in my community tab about which game you guys would want me to see, and it's been a month since I've gotten around to the game, and I do apologize for that, but that's mainly because I did have a good amount of things planned. As I've said for a good while, I had Under Night planned, but that also got delayed because that took a lot more work than I thought it was going to need. And then some live stuff has shown up as well, so I had to delay it by a little bit, but you guys seem to be understanding of that as well, so thank you guys for that. But if you have not already, make sure you go down into the description below because that's where all of my social medias are located. My Twitter, Instagram, Discord, and Facebook are all ways of you guys being able to know whenever I upload another video or have any updates for the channel. But if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more, as well as share this video out with your friends and family. But until the next video, take care.